Tribe. The book has something like 26 chapters. They're all fairly short. They're adapted from blog entries, rants, and whines that I made over the years. Okay, this is called The Doctor Tribe. I was at a party with my friend Abe. When a man asked him the extent of his education, Abe replied, "Well, I have a master's degree in education." Then he asked me. I said, "I'm an MD." That is, Abe has a master's degree, I am an MD. Medical students don't learn medicine like electricians learn wiring. They study their craft, to be sure, but learn also how to be a doctor. They absorb that role into their personhood. Further, they adopt a particular practice style our culture prefers, the biomedical scientist. So on day one of training, two parallel curricula crank up. The one that continues through residency is medicine. The longer, actually lifelong course consists of steady induction into our medical subculture, what we may as well call a tribe. For cohesion, continuity, and protection, tribes tend to divide the world into insiders and outsiders, us and them. This tribe's initiation isn't a discrete ritual like a banquet or diploma ceremony. It's a slow, gradual incorporation of us. As in any tribe, doctors learn a special outlook and language. They learn what to say and how to say it, pertinent gestures, what to wear, what to avoid. They tend to socialize with their colleagues. This tribe's God is science. Fact and logic aren't just paramount, but unquestionable, virtually sacred. In fact, a member's stature rests largely on demonstrated devotion to objectivity. This focus is biomedicine's strength, and as we shall see, its weakness. If you're not a doctor, eavesdrop on a medical discussion. For all you comprehend, you might as well be observing the Albanian parliament. Tribe members were once much like you, but their years of sequestered training resulted in cultural immigration. If physiology and biochemistry are biomedical training's lyrics, its tune is how to be a doctor in this particular society. Almost any American physician will agree that his or her education's background music included, I have a series of points here. If this were a PowerPoint show, I'd show you what we like to call in the United States bullets. But just call them points, and I'll signify points by saying boing, boing. Incidentally, I know there's doctors here. You can look around, you can tell who they are. They look intelligent. I'll ask them to compare what I'm talking about to your training. Okay, number of points here. One is rigid hierarchy. Freshman medical students are wretches like Army recruits. Sophomores and juniors are noticed, but mainly as annoyances. Seniors, having attained a summit of sorts, are mere gophers for interns, who in turn are nameless drudges to resident physicians. At the pyramid's apex, the chair of the department glows with success, while fretting about the associate professors clawing at his or her ankles. Within such a system, one learns one's place through the principle that abuse flows downhill. As a senior student, I saw a resident loudly upbraid my intern. An hour later, that same intern berated me for a minor omission. And that evening, I'm sorry to say, I joked with my roommates about how dirt ignorant one of my patients was. Boing. Permanent inadequacy. There's far more for doctors in training to know than anyone can possibly learn. Worse, what was so yesterday isn't necessarily so today. In a probably apocryphal story, a medical school dean advised his new graduates, "I'm sorry, but about a third of what we've taught you is incorrect. We just don't know which third." Little wonder that students perennially feel deficient. Medical rounds in teaching hospitals are in part a compensatory ritual in which students and doctors recite scholarly references as proof of their adequacy, called roundsmanship. Has anybody heard that term? Roundsmanship? Yeah. The practice is defined as, whoever's lacking here, it sure isn't me. Years of such defensiveness can breed a feigned confidence, a texture of arrogance. Boing. Overwork and sleep deprivation. Ripping along on caffeine all night to prepare for next morning's freshman physiology exam is grueling, but only mild practice for the junior year, when the student will see patients around the clock. In addition, sleeplessness dulls the edge of intellect, leaving the student ready, even longing to accept instruction unquestioningly. The overwork issue blooms in American media regularly, as timely as a cicada cycle. When we discover that a surgical resident about to operate on us hasn't slept since Whitsuntide, we jump off the table, write letters to editors, and call for congressional hearings. Headlines blare outrage for a week, and then the issue burrows underground again for a decade. That this pattern has persisted so long with so little reform suggests that we as a society believe healers ought to overwork. Of all the ways we could see healing, we choose to regard it as a zero-sum game, the patient's improvement being roughly equivalent to the healer's depletion. In any case, overwork is likely to remain a viable theme indefinitely. Around the country, residency directors who restrict working hours find themselves pushed back by residents who claim these limits shortchange their education, not to mention insult their overachievement ethic. To paraphrase Calvin Coolidge, the business of America is busyness. We're obligate live wires who even talk about leisure as kicking back, hardly a tranquil metaphor. If Americans are generally workaholics, we doctors lead the pack, our training having expertly prepared us. My physiology professor taught, for example, that a muscle's sole function is contraction, work. When a student objected that a muscle can't possibly contract without first relaxing, he said, relaxing? Well, that's doing nothing at all. So do something, and do it now, stat, and when you're finished, draw that blood down in room 121, then find something else to do. Thinking, wondering, and chatting with patients might be virtuous, but extraneous to the work at hand. This hustle-bustle pays off later in practice, as third parties pay physicians for active procedures, and not for simply sitting and listening to patients. Boing. Unhesitating dedication. When medical students' personal needs compete with training obligations, they're reminded that a physician's devotion must be practically monastic, which is an apt term, as the non-medical are often referred to in this business as lay people. By their third year, students accept that a meaningful personal life must remain a remote vision. One of my classmates, an Orthodox Jew, said he couldn't be available to work on Saturdays, the Sabbath. The dean had seen that before. He gave the student a photocopy from his files, a letter he'd secured from a rabbi, stating that saving lives justified working on the Sabbath. Last being social isolation. Medical students spend their off time either hermetically studying or restricting themselves to the tight circle of their classmates. During these formative years, remember this is early 20s for most students, these formative years, cloistered together, away from competing views of the world, pressures toward clinical detachment are reinforced, while relationship skills atrophy. Now these points I laid out might sound like North Korean brainwashing, but they're not. This is the United States. Okay. Inhibiting this ambiance year after year It's a rare medical student who doesn't succumb to it. The conversion from altruistic pre-med into biomedical scientist is so gradual and so reasonable, really, that it's hardly noticed, nor is that instilled tilt toward fact and away from feeling. The longer a belief inhabits us, the deeper it goes until we finally forget that it's only a belief, not necessarily the way the world really is. Don't think of the way medical students are taught to see things then as simply a belief or an opinion. By the time we're doctors, it resides in ourselves. It's who we are. Actually, we're not unique in that, only in how we handle it. Everyone maintains invisible beliefs that dictate their behavior, and in aggregate, that's what culture is. Mental health, though, consists of reviewing perspectives for current usefulness and making appropriate changes. The medical tribe's outlook resides too deeply to review easily, but I know it can be done. I do it regularly when my wife says, "How would you like to change your personality right now?" I consider, whether to do a Q&A thing here, and often those sessions get pretty tedious. So I thought I'd just ask for one good question now, and then read a second piece. So think carefully before you speak.
Why don't you establish a panel to judge the questions?
What is the meaning of life?
Expected from this crowd. Okay, let me read a second piece and see if anything worthy arises. So talking about that's a